Hi, welcome to Street Priest Ministries. I'm your host, Brother Jay, as we're taking the Gospels back to the streets. Today's drive-through message is the Book of Enoch, and Brother Jay reads. Alright, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, read from the Book of Enoch. I feel the book should have been, actually it was, I'm going to give you a little history of canonization. It was in the Bible, it was canonized, and it was taken out. So I'm going to give you a history of the canon of the Bible before we get into the Book of Enoch and start reading. The Book of Enoch has been quoted by Jesus, Paul, and the Book of Jude. Actually, the whole Book of Jude leans heavily on the Book of Enoch. So we're going to cover this today. I've been wanting to get around to it, but first I'm going to read to you what the word canon. Some of you think, or you have no idea how the Bible was conceived and put together. Some of you think that Pastor Jesus and Pastor Paul preached out of the King James Version or the American Standard Version or whatever other versions that you're used to read. No, that's not the case. It was a period of centuries of how the Bible was put together and different translators. And we're going to read a little bit about that. And the canonization that was involved with the Bible. And you're going to learn what the word canon is. So we'll start there first. So I have what's called the Oxford English Dictionary. Yes, I still read books. I'm old school, and I still read dictionaries. I know I can do it online, but it's more, what can you say? It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks. I'm going to read the Oxford Dictionary's definition of what the word canon is. Canon, a general rule or principle by which something is judged, a church decree or law, the works of a particular author or artist that are recognized as genuine, a list of literary works considered as being of the highest quality, a member of the clergy or the staff of a cathedral. Okay, they're getting into other things here, but that's the main thing I wanted you to get. So they had guidelines to determine which books should be in the Bible and which books weren't. Now, a lot of books that's out of the Bible I have that was originally in the Bible. They had taken out. They were called the Apocryphal books. And Book of Enoch was one of those books that was taken out. Now, I'm gonna give you a little bit of history. I know it's kind of dry and boring, but it's good for you to know this. A little history of canonization. All right. And the reason I'm doing this, because as I've studied this book, the Bible, a lot of years, and the history of it, and as well as the languages. And I really come to have a deep fondness, a love, appreciation for this book and the people who helped put this book together. A lot of them were ostracized, a lot of them were forced in exile, and a lot of them were executed. So I hold this, as I've discovered this and become very familiar with the history of it, I hold it in high esteem and appreciation, and see myself as a type of defender of the faith. I don't suffer fools nor ignoramuses that denigrate the great work that these men of God have sacrificed and paid for in their own blood in a lot of cases, reputations in others, being, like I said, ostracized and banished and pursued, taking great risks to get this Word of God, words of eternity, into our hands. That's why I'd be damned if I let the Smiley Saws, the Rufus Glitter Teeths, and the New Age Balaams crap on these great men's accomplishments. Now, the first canonization that's noted is called the Moravian canon. And it was in AD 70. This was the first that was recognized. Now, this was over a span of centuries that the Bible was finally put together. The Council of Laodicea was another canonization. And, well, let me go back. The first canonization excluded Hebrews, James, and the third book of John. So they weren't even in the first canonization. To just show you how books were put in and taken out. So in this first canonization, you had Hebrews missing, James, and the third book of John. Okay, in the Council of Laodicea, the second canonization, this took place in AD 393. It had everything, the Apocrypha included, which is the Book of Enoch, which we're going to get to. That was included as well. And everything was left out except Revelations, the Apocrypha, John's book. So you had no Revelations. Then you had the Council of Carthage in AD 397. And they pretty much agreed with the Council of Hippo, with the exception of the Book of Enoch was taken out, and some of the other apocryphal books. Now, you had famous translators that translated, the Book of Enoch, by the way, the problem that these canonizers had with it, they said, well, the major thing, the major reason the Book of Enoch was taken out, because they said sex, the angels having sex with women, contradicts what Christ said when he said that we shall be as the angels of heaven, having no sex, when one of the scribes had asked him, about would it be marriage and giving the marriage and sex in heaven? Jesus said, no, you be as an angel. So they said, well, that's in direct contradiction of what Jesus said. Well, yes and no. You have different types of orders of angels. You have cherubims, you have cherubims, you have watchers, you have different orders of angels. Some of the angels had wings, some of them didn't. Some were creatures, I would call them. They were face of an eagle and a face of a lion and so forth. Now, I'm going to read, just to destroy just that one basic premise, I'm going to read you out the Bible to show exactly that the Book of Enoch, just one. There's many others I could prove. And like I said, the book has been quoted by Jesus, Paul. They didn't have a problem with it, as well as Jude, who leaned heavily on it. But I'm going to show you. And we're going to go to the Bible just briefly, and then we'll go to the book of Jude. Now, they had a problem with angels having sex with women. But the Bible said that the angels had sex with women. Turn to Genesis 1. 6:1, I'm sorry. Turn to Genesis 6:1. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, they were beautiful, they were attractive. And they took them wives of all which they chose. Now, the Bible's making it clear that these are sons of God, right? Okay. So go to Job. So we clear on what sons of God are. We're going to have a good, clear definition. Time Brother Jay finish with you and me. All right, we're going to turn to Job. Turn to Job chapter 2, verse 1. Job chapter 2, verse 1. You ready? Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came among them to present himself before the Lord. See, sons of God are angels. And I already taught that Satan has access to heaven. They're going to give him the boot in Revelation, but he still goes up there and accuses the brethren. That's what his job is. He does his, the prosecutor, he's on his job. But anyway, now that you got a clear picture that the sons of God are angels, and the Bible made it clear that these angels had sex with women of the earth, and they produced what was called hybrids, the giants. That the Book of Enoch is in no conflict with the Bible whatsoever. And that's just one point. That's just one. I could go on with a whole list of other ones that correlate exactly what the Bible says, but I'm not going to take that time. I just want to make that point. Okay? Now, you had different translators of the Bible. You had William Tyndale, who was burned at the stake, by the way, for his translating. And it was, before the scriptures was only, especially during the Dark Ages, only the nobles and the priests and people like that had access to the scripture. It wasn't in the ordinary man and woman's hands, the ordinary working class. So these men risked their life to put it in ordinary people like you and I's hands. John Knox, another translator. You had Jerome, the famous Jerome Latin's Vulgate. You had John Wycliffe, probably one of the most, at 1382, one of the most famous Bibles before the King James, most definitely, the Wycliffe version. You had 1455, the Gutenberg, out of Germany. That's when they came with the printing press and mass-produced Bibles. And then you had the famous King James version in the 1600s. King James got together 70 scholars, and over a period of 11 years, 1604 to 1611, they produced what is known as the famous King James Bible. King James wanted to have, Bibles became big business. They wanted competition with that Gutenberg. Business is business. And King James was right. The Bible's the number one, King James been the number one selling book in the history of the world, of any book. The Bible's number one. The Bible is number one. Outsold any book on earth. So King James he had good vision. So during this debate of these 70 scholars, they almost threw out John, the King James scholars, the Revelator. The Book of Revelation, they said it was too far out, just like they said the Book of Enoch was too far out. I guess God's too far out. But anyway, now that I gave you that basic backdrop in history, this is the Book of Enoch. And we're going to read from. I'm going to read the introduction. I'm going to read everything. And I'm going to break the Book of Enoch down into a series like I did Revelations. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. And I did a series of 3 videos. Broke it up basically into 3 videos. And we'll do the same thing with the Book of Enoch. And this happened to be one of my favorite books, period, to read. We've read it several times. Revelations is up there as well as the Book of Daniel. I love prophetic books. Those are my favorite books as far as Scripture is concerned. All right, The introduction. As the Book of Enoch is, in some respects, the most notable extant apocalyptic work outside the canonical scriptures. It was inside, but they took it outside. It will be inappropriate to offer a few remarks here on apocalyptic literature, generally in writing about the books which belong to this literature. Professor Burkett says very pointedly that they are the most characteristic survival of what I will venture to call, with all its narrowness and its incoherence, the heroic age of Jewish history, the age when the nation attempted to realize in action the part of a peculiar people of God. God calls us a peculiar people in the New Testament. Peculiar comes from a word, Greek word meaning to take a dot and put a circle around it. Jewish history, the age part of a peculiar people of God. It ended in catastrophe, but the nation left two successors, the Christian church and the rabbinical schools, each of which carried on some of the old national aims. And of the two, it was the Christian church that was most faithful to the ideas enshrined in Apocalypse. And it did consider itself, but without some reason, the fulfillment of those ideas. What is wanted, therefore, is studying apocalypses. Is them, especially with the belief in the New Age. This is the New Age movement. Age of doing. Now get that teaching. Age of liars. Talk all about how John Deweyism had captured the church. The early church had the breath of eternity on it. This New Age church has the breath of Dewey on it. And appeals to satisfy men and their fleshly appetites. The old rugged cross church of old that had the breath of eternity seek to please God. They didn't give a damn what men thought. What is wanted, therefore, is study in apocalypses is, above all, sympathy with the idea that the underlie them, and especially with the belief in a new age, and those who believe that Christianity, a new era, really did dawn for us ought, I think, to have that sympathy. We study the apocalypses to learn how our spiritual ancestors, the Bible said there's nothing new under the sun. Basically, man was evil in Genesis, and man is evil in 2017. We study the apocalypses to learn how our spiritual ancestors hoped against hope that God would make all right in the end. God's divine justice will finally break through these clouds of darkness of man's tyranny that has ruled this earth for thousands of years under the auspices of Satan himself, the fallen. We study the apocalypses to learn how our spiritual ancestors hoped against hope that God would make all right in the end, and that we, their children, and here today studying them is an indication that their hopes was not wholly unfounded. Hope is indeed the main underlying motive power which prompted the writers of the apocalypses. And this hope is more intensive and ardent in that it shines from a background which is dark with despair. Has anything changed? All the despair in the Middle East, all the hundreds of thousands that have been slaughtered by the Islamic terrorists. in the Middle East. And all the carnage that's been happening around the world of bombings, of terrorism, including the United States. Anything change? And dictators, such as Fat Boy over in Pillsbury Doughboy over in North Korea, anything change? Iran, anything change? Saudi Arabia, anything change? Apocalypse is spared of the world in which they lived, a world in which the godly were of no account, which the wicked seem too often to triumph and prosper. Look at history, Sodom and Gomorrah, Rome. I mean, we can go on and on. Children of Israel in the Bible had dark periods. The United States is living this right now. A nation of lawlessness. That was founded as a republic. World in which they lived, a world in which the godly were of no account, while the wicked seem too often to triumph and prosper, with evil everywhere, all around. Sound familiar? And the wicked go unpunished, doing a litany of crimes worthy to be hung in the old days, or taken out in front of the firing squad. Treason, the main norm of the day. With evil everywhere, all around, the apocalypse saw no hope for the world as it was. For such a world there was no remedy, only destruction. If the good were ever to triumph, it must be in a new world. Despairing, therefore, of the world around them, the apocalyptus, say that fast, apocalyptus, centered their hope upon a world to come, heaven, where there's order, where there's righteousness, where there's peace, where there's righteous judgment, where God, who is a just God, rules and maintains that order. That's what all these, the Bible said they were pilgrims and strangers in the Bible. We're to be too. Looking forward to that home. This world here is going to hell fast in a handbasket. And God's going to destroy this earth in the end anyway. He's going to ball it up like an artist that wants to ball up a piece of art that he's tired of, throw it in the fire. He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. For all you earth people out there, put that in your pipe and smoke. Show you what God going to think of his earth in the end. Read Revelations, tells you. Anyway, would come to their own evil, would find no place. It is thought which underlies the opening words of the Book of Enoch, the words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, which all the wicked and godless are to be removed. Backs up everything John the Revelator says when you read this book. I taught on the apocalypse. You can get that teaching. I taught on all the books of Revelation. Nowhere in this book is the essence of this hope more beautifully expressed than in short metrical piece in the first chapter. Now this is an excerpt from the Book of Enoch. But with the righteous he will make peace, and will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them. And they all shall belong to God. And they shall all be prospered, and they shall all be blessed. And he will help them all. and light shall appear unto them, and he will make peace with them. That's 1 Enoch 1:8. In the books belonging to the literature which have come down to us, this hope is expressed, or more or less vividly, nor is the dark background warning with the prophecies of coming wrath. It will therefore be realized that the apocalyptic literature is almost wholly concerned with the future. It is true that again and again the apocalypse glances at the contemporary history of the world around him, to which many cryptic references is made. In fact, which necessitates some knowledge of the history of this period, circa 200 BC, AD 100, for a full understanding of the books in question. But these references are only made with a view to comforting the oppressed and afflicted with the thought that even the most mighty of earthly powers are shortly to be overthrown by the event of the new and glorious era. People thought Rome would last forever. It lasted approximately 16th century. Excuse me. And it wasn't even that much. I think Rome fell. Yeah, I'm about right. It's about 14 centuries. Approximately. Say approximately. From Julius Caesar to Constantine. But it fell. That's the point I'm making. They thought Rome would last forever. How many kingdoms did fall that they thought would last forever? I mean, you could start with the great kingdom of Egypt. It fell. Syria, it fell. Babylon, it fell. Medo-Persian Empire, it fell. The Gregorian Empire, Greek Empire, it fell. Rome Empire, it fell. And we got this Antichrist kingdom coming up, and it's going to fall too, because God's going to smash it. Christ is going to stomp on it and mash them out like grapes in the valley of Megiddo. It's going to fall too. God's going to set up his kingdom for 1,000 years before he ends time to show man and teach man who the boss is after he smashed his fist into this earth. In the book of Revelations, you can read about it. To be overthrown by the advent of a new and glorious era in which every justice and all incongruities of life will be done away with, so that every reference to the present is merely a position taken up from which a point to the future. Now, since we have seen the apocalyptic despair of any bettering of the present world, and therefore contemplate its destruction as the preliminary of the new order of things, they look away from the world in their visions of the future. They conceive of otherworldly forces coming into play in the reconstitution of things and of society general. And since these are otherworldly forces, the supernatural plays a great part in the apocalyptic literature. This supernatural coloring would often strike the reader of this literature as fantastic and at times bizarre, but this should not be permitted to obscure the reality which often lies behind these weird shadows. The Bible is full of strange, supernatural means more natural, strange interactions between angelic and demonic beings interfacing with man throughout history. God coming down on Mount Sinai, the old mountain, caught ablaze. I mean, you got the supernatural plagues of 10 plagues of Egypt. Well, the whole world saw it. That's why the whole world was scared to death of God. Of the Old Testament. They seen what Egypt went through, how he wiped them out. History books are full of it. God terrorized the world of that day and day to let them know he's the boss. He's going to do it again in these last days. This supernatural, which means more natural, coloring will often strike the reader of this literature as fantastic and at times bizarre, but this should not be permitted to obscure the reality which often lies behind these weird shadows. Mental visions are not always easily expressed in words. The seer who in a vision has received a message in some fantastic guise necessarily has to impress upon his mind of what he has seen. If you never saw a tank before or an airplane, and you're one of these prophets that are television or jumbotron, giant television, such as I believe John saw in the Book of Revelation, where he's talking about the image that seemed to be a huge image that was alive and brought to life. The image of a man on a TV screen. You can only put it in words. Like Isaiah saw a steamship in Isaiah 18. He's called it a water gobbling ship, bulrush. He could only describe it in a language frame of his day. Because it's really, and especially if you're describing beings that you've never seen before. You can say it's like unto this and it's like unto that. But in reality, it's hardly human words which are in the third dimension. It's hard to describe something that's extra dimension. Mental visions are not always easily expressed in words. The seer